Greetings, you beautiful humans. This is your friendly neighborhood life coach, Glenn Klein, with episode 2 of The Story of a Quilt. If you didn't see episode 1, you might want to start out with that. It gives the rationale and the purpose of why I'm doing this. But this is episode 2, where it all started. And we go all the way up the panel to the first one right there, the Chicago Cubs. This was the logo that was on the left sleeve of the Chicago Cubs when I first became a fan of theirs in the mid and late 60s. And this represents so much in my life that I actually had that logo, that sleeve emblem tattooed after the Cubs won the World Series for the first time in 108 years in 2016. This sweater that I had, you can see the pocket is still there. Terry, the woman that did the entire quilt, chose to leave it on there. And you'll also notice that the logos on the different shirts aren't necessarily centered, they're not perfect. And I wanted it that way, or I like it the fact that it's that way, because life isn't perfect. We're perfect internally. Everybody is. That's why I refer to everybody as beautiful humans. We're beautiful on the inside. The exterior working out of that perfection isn't always perfect. So all these things are, and I'll explain later why they're different sizes as far as the practical working out of the quilt. But the Cubs represent to me so much of what has been important to me. First of all, in 1969, the Cubs were running away with the National League Eastern Division at the time. And they collapsed famously against the New York Mets, who went on to win the World Series. I was 9 years old and devastated. 9 years old was also the first summer that I went to summer camp at a residential camp. We'll talk about that when we get to the Menominee Square. The Cubs introduced me to being part of a team. And it was such an important element with my father, who was a Cubs fan. He grew up just a couple of train stops from Wrigley Field, the friendly confines. And eventually, I nicknamed Camp Menominee the friendly confines. More on that later. The Cubs fan base was devastated in '69. And then we made the playoffs in '84, and there was a curse of the Billy Goat, they called it. If you want to know more about it, go to my friend Rich Cohn's book, The Curse, The Story of the Chicago Cubs. It's an incredible book. And it tells not only the story of the Cubs, but it's really a history lesson for America and baseball in general. It's incredibly well written, as I said. So the Cubs, I got my love for stadiums and facilities and broadcasting because every game was on WGN television and radio. And eventually, when I went into broadcasting, at first, starting in high school, I was in the Chicago Cubs press box at 15 years old with a guy named Vince Lloyd and Lou Boudreau, who's a Hall of Famer. They were the broadcasters. Jack Brickhouse, Harry Carey. This is where I got my love of communicating. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was broadcasting games into my little cassette recorder. That's what I was going to do until I followed my heart, which I recommend everybody always doing. Follow your heart, and I bought Camp Menominee. At camp, not only was my love of sports realized, my desire to be a blessing to humanity was realized, my desire to broadcast. We had our own radio station, WMEN, all camp, all day, 4985 on your AM dial. So much came from my experience with the Cubs, and 2016, November 2nd, 2016, the happiest day of my life. That's why I got it tattooed. And people say, Glenn, you've got 6 kids, you've got 3 grandkids. How could that be? You've had a wonderful life with Dawn. How could November 2nd, 2016 be the happiest day of your life? Because I got to share it with all of them, with my dad, and the concept of just persevering and suffering and yet still ultimately coming out on top. This represents so much to me, and thank you for letting me share it with you. Let me share some more stuff too. Go to my website, klein.coach, give me a buzz, and let's continue this journey on episode 3 next time on The Story of a Quilt.